We're standing in front of a giant pile of dirt because we're going to talk about soil composition, containers, and a bunch of other fun stuff right now. Guys, what's up? We got Elizabeth here.
Hi guys.
She's my local expert we got here at the MrMaple Nursery. Anytime I'm looking for a question, calling up Elizabeth.
And he has a lot of out-of-the-box questions.
I'm a curious guy. Today, I'm a little curious about some container gardening though.
That's a good thing to be curious about because that's a lot of what we deal in at the nursery. You know, we sell you your 1 gallons and then you see nice pots and you want to know the correct way to do it.
Exactly. I mean, a Japanese maple looks great in the ground, but putting it in a container can allow you to find the perfect place in the garden. If you don't have as much space in your landscape, it'll give you a great opportunity to grow a lot of very cool trees. And it can also be some artistic expression that you don't necessarily get just putting a plant in the ground.
Very true, but there are some things you need to know. One of the things you need to think about first is your environment, your drainage. You know, we all know Japanese maples don't like wet feet. So one of the things you want to make sure your pot has is good drainage, whether that be the composition or at least one hole in your pot.
Pot feet. Now, not hot feet. You need some container feet for your actual pot. And this is going to raise that plant up off the ground. It's going to allow it to drain better. Sometimes the container can actually suction to the surface of your
porch, wherever you
yeah.
have it, your environment.
Exactly. And what we do, you can even throw some pot feet under there, or you can get little paint stirrers. I know Matt and Tim's mom, Evelyn, that's what she talks about. That's what she does. Just giving that little bit of clearance over your actual area that you're going to be keeping the plant in is a great thing to do to make sure that it's actually draining.
The second tip, which we live and breathe by at MrMaple, is no saucers. We see so many trees, they're like, what's wrong with my tree? And then you look in the picture and you find a saucer. We know, maples do not like wet feet. So even if you put that saucer on there and it's just to keep the water out of your floor or off your porch because it's a container garden, you're gonna need to prop it up so it's not sitting in that water, because then you'll leave yourself open to bacteria, to root rots. So key number 2, no saucers.
Drainage is important. Guys, we talk about root rot a lot on this channel. I mean, that is one of the biggest things that can kill either a mature maple or a younger maple, is making sure that that water wicks off of those roots and it gives it time to dry out. And picking a pot is very important for that because there's a lot of different kinds of containers.
There is. At the Maple Nursery, we use 1 gallon pots that have at least 5 holes, a center hole, and then 4 or 5 surrounding the outside edge. Now this provides our maples the ability to shed that water that they don't take up in their roots and to not sit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole point of having a production container is to wick that moisture as quick as possible, to be cheap and effective. And it really helps in that production state. You know, they're easily collapsible, they have good drainage, but they're not that pretty.
They are not.
So that's where there's different types of containers. We have an ornamental container right here with a couple of maples in it. We might be getting to that sooner. But it's just something that's important whenever it comes to preference, picking out an ornamental container that you enjoy, something that contrasts the qualities of your Japanese maples, and something that's going to have great drainage.
Yeah, and just something you like. And you know, you find a pot you like, you can always make it suitable to your maple. You drill holes, add rocks. You can add a pot inside of a pot so that your inside pot has the good drainage and the other one is decorative. So you can there's always options if you find a pot you like and you want to make it work for your maple.
Yeah, I love container gardening. That's what most of my plants consist of because I rent. So having plants in containers allows me to move them Some of my larger trees, like a gigantic Maiku that I have, is still going to be pretty hard to move. But just having it where it's not throwing those roots, and because anytime you transplant a tree,
Yeah.
that can cause issues. You know, it has to be done at the perfect time. You have to get enough dirt. And sometimes those roots will pick up a lot heavier soil than would be in a pot. So it's a great thing to do if you rent, you have a little bit of space. It's an awesome opportunity to learn how to grow plants, because I kind of think of container gardening as like an indoor-outdoor plant.
Very much so.
Another thing we might think about whenever we're planting a tree is the area that you're planting a tree. This is important as well for containers. Guys, you don't want to be putting this next to an AC or anything that's going to be shooting that hot air right into that plant. It might be a good spot and it looks good, but you got to think about the health of the tree. This also comes down to color. Guys, Brian Rule, my homie, my friend, my maple mentor, he is a guy that gets great color on some stuff, because he is always trying to experiment with shade conditions, with sun conditions, and growing in a container is that perfect kind of in between of, you know, wanting to put it somewhere here, wanting to put it somewhere there. Find that perfect spot. You can even just play with it in a container for a year or two before you even put it in the ground, looking for that perfect location. So think of it as not just only a means to an end, but it's also a tool to experiment with. And what you got to remember is whenever you put it in this container, that's going to bring it up a zone in the hardiness scale as well. Because you got to think about that surface area that's exposed on the sides of the plant. So things like cooling and drying out are going to happen a lot quicker inside of a container than they would in the ground.
And that's why maintenance for your Japanese maple in a container is going to be important. You want to, with good drainage holes, you want to check your plant. The brothers say every 3 years you want to check the drainage holes and bring them up and just make sure the roots are not growing in. And if they are, you have two options. You can root prune, or you can step your maple up into a bigger pot. And it's just about one root ball size bigger is how you'd step up. You don't want to step up too much, or your maple could get cold feet. It just won't expand as much. They like to have that boundary around them.
Yeah, what I like to think of it as, whenever you step that plant up, you got to think about how much moisture the rest of that soil is going to suck from the plant.
Yes.
So whenever you up pot, you're definitely going to want to water a little bit more than you were normally. And just thinking about what time you're going to up pot. We're in late summer, so not the most ideal time to up pot. I would say a worst time would be at the beginning of summer.
Yes.
But as we make that transition from summer to fall, it becomes a lot more forgiving. So that's why I think today we're going to pot up some plants. And the good thing about here is that we have great watering systems to keep this tree hydrated and take care of all the needs that it needs. Now, let's get to something fun. We're going to pot this awesome Waco Nishiki and this amazing English lace up one pot size, maybe two pot sizes.
Let's do it.
Now you got your container, you got your trees. What do we do after that?
We pot them up.
Exactly. Now let's get into that. So guys, we have this beautiful ornamental pot that was just sitting around at the nursery. We got it on our little rolly thing, so as you can see right here, we only have one hole in this container. So what we're gonna do is, we got our little gravel right here. This is gonna give us a nice medium for drainage. So, headphone users, beware. This might be a little loud, but we're gonna put
About an inch or two of gravel in the bottom.
Yeah, just enough for that to clear, and you don't want your plant to be sitting in water.
And this is what we talked about, adapting a pot you like to fit your maple. Adding this gravel is helping with the drainage so that we can use this pot that we like.
Exactly. And what will happen is all that water is going to drain down. The roots will kind of soak into this area. They'll figure out that it's really wet, so they'll focus that energy in the actual dirt itself. But if they need, they can always go down a little bit lower if that's where the water sits. Yes. So giving that plant the option, which is always nice. And then we also have this Waco Nishiki just begging to be potted up. I mean, this thing, the geraniums, they grow pretty quick. You can see this is put on some pretty vigorous root growth. You might actually cut around the pot, because for me, I hate pruning roots. Makes me sad to see that plant put all that work in there for, you know, to grow. So we're going to leave those roots on there, and we're going to be putting it into a nursery pot, which has 5 holes for drainage, 4 on the sides, 1 in the middle, and it's going to give us a great opportunity to continue to grow this beautiful Waco Nishiki.
Would you add gravel to this one, or would you not?
So if I wanted to be really safe, I would probably put some gravel in it, but I know that these are going to drain. You can see these holes actually go about 1 inch over top of the bottom of the hole. So that's really going to allow a lot of good drainage. That's why they make these things, so you don't have to necessarily put gravel in it, but you wanted to err on the side of caution. Who's going to stop you? So let's talk about our dirt.
Our dirt at MrMaple, while he grabs some, is made out of a few different things. That way we have good drainage to help our maples.
Yeah, guys, lots of bark in here, you know, some perlite to hold that water. It's important to have a porous material mixed in, because it just, all that water will soak up into all the pores on something like perlite, or even a wood bark or bark can really hold a lot of water. But you also want something that's going to allow it to drain very quickly as well, which most of the nursery soil is going to give you that opportunity. You might want to stay away from things like pure flour, or even things like Miracle Grow soil at this point in the year, because you got to be careful. You don't want to get a fertilized soil that's going to keep your tree awake into the fall. Now, if you're potting up during the spring or summertime, like early summer, that's not going to necessarily be a problem. But during this time, later in the season, you don't want to wake your tree back up.
And that's why you want to have a good mix of large granules and small. They'll help hold the moisture and then also create space for air and the water to sit when you do water your tree.
Exactly. It's all about finding that happy medium. Now let's pot these up. Guys, you can see, look at the roots on these. You can tell it's filled out its pot. It's holding that shape of the container, and the roots are going crazy.
It's ready.
It is ready to be put in another pot. So, just gonna fill this pot up with some soil. Now, something that is important to remember is making sure that if this is going to be a process where you're pruning some roots, you need to make sure that they're staying wet. Now, removing a lot of dirt and completely root pruning, pulling out, if you're doing bonsai, I'm kind of referring to you, but during the winter time is whenever you should be doing that root pruning stuff. All the energy is in the roots, so they can recover and bounce back quicker. But just remembering to keep them wet so they don't dry out and get hurt. So that's something I always like to remember. These trees just got watered, so their soil is very moist, and they're perfect for potting up right now. We're also going to water them in whenever we get done.
So, I now have my English lace potted up. I have it at my desired height in the pot. So there's a few things I'm going to check. First, I'm going to make sure, as you should with all maples, that you are not covering the crown of your maple. And then we want to make sure we're not mounding up next to the trunk.
Another thing that I've learned while potting up plants and talking to horticulturally minded people like my friend Jordan, you want the dirt to be compressed enough to where that tree isn't going to have random pockets of water, random pockets of air, but you don't want to compress it enough to where the tree doesn't want to push roots. You don't want to create a pot inside of your pot.
Yes.
And that's something that is important whenever you're planting trees in your landscape. You want to make sure that soil is soft enough to where the tree is encouraged to grow out, but where it's not so soft to where it leaves those spaces open.
Yeah. So you can do that by just pushing down with your palms, not too firm, not like you're kneading bread, just giving it a little push to make sure that it stands in there. And then you can even do that after you water it in a little bit, just give it a little push, just to make sure that that dirt is in where it's supposed to be.
And another little cherry on top, something I like to do is go around the edge with my fingers and just kind of create a little bit of a lip around the top of the tree to where it kind of will wick the water to the sides of the pot and allow it to go all the way down, keeping that away from just the middle of the root ball, kind of letting that water pile up in the middle. Guys, that's about it for potting up a Japanese maple. We just did a quick little crash course on container gardening. I really love this English lace. Guys, containers are a great tool to accentuate the beauty of a tree. Now, I picked out this English lace for this pot specifically because, I mean, the fall time is going to look amazing in this when you get those pinks, reds in the springtime. Yes, it's going to contrast so beautifully. You can see the shape of the pot almost accentuates the shape of the tree as well. And that's why we put ornamental containers, is because there's so much play involved, so much artistry involved in a container growing, and it really just allows a tree to be the star of its own show sometimes. And that's why I love container gardening. These can be expensive, but it's worth it.
It is. And I mean, you can always DIY your own pot too. If you are on the artistic side and you see a pot, we can make that pot work. It's just a little crafting and it'll fit.
Exactly. And something as well as putting it in a container, you get to see the shape. You can move it around and change it. You're not beholden to any one thing inside of a container, which I love the fluidity and freedom that it really provides. And that's why we wanted to bring it to you guys and share, some of our information and knowledge about these things with you all, because it's such an awesome tool for growing maples and growing trees. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out. Share it with your gardening friends, because who knows, they might have a plant that would be perfect for a container, and they might not know how to go about it. So share this video with them, and remember to take care.
God bless.
Have a great day.